Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the STIF Advisory Committee to order. My name is Josh Kaczynski, and I am your chair. We are going to begin this evening with a roll call. If you're here, please give me some indication. If you're not here, remain silent. Kelly Clark. Josh Kaczynski, I am here. Scott Lemons.
Here.
Okay, Bart Mueller.
Here.
Okay, Chelsea Miller.
Here.
Joshua Myatt. Cassette Reese.
Here.
David Reeser.
Here.
Carrie Turner. Okay, Bill Johnston.
Here.
Gino Grimaldi.
Here.
Pete Knox.
Here.
Okay, looks like everybody successfully followed directions. So tonight we are going to be reviewing 3 agenda items. The first is the 2026 Lane Coordinated Plan. The second is we're going to get some background on the STIF discretionary and intercommunity funding process. And then following that, we're going to have a presentation on 3 of the discretionary applications that we know exist so far. There's going to be some more of those, and we'll hear more about that in a little bit. Before we get to those agenda items, there is a public comment period. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
We do not.
Is there anybody online wishing to make a public comment?
No.
Okay, go ahead and close the public comment period then, and start with our first agenda item, the 2026 Lane Coordinated Plan, presented by Dan Collister and Brandon Melton.
Hello, I am Daniel Collister. I'm a planner at the Lane Council of Governments, and this is the Lane Coordinated Plan. Next slide, please. And next. Thank you. So what is the Coordinated Plan? Just a quick refresher. It is a federally required document. The LTD updates every handful of years. The last update was in 2019. The purpose of the plan is to improve mobility for older adults and people with disabilities. And the way that we do that is through a lot of data analysis, a lot of outreach and engagement with stakeholders, trying to better understand how the system is working for them, how it's not, where there are gaps, where there's overlaps, and maybe opportunities for more efficient service, particularly looking at how well the service is connecting people to health and human services. So we take all that data and we develop a project list that informs investments for the future. Next slide, please. Here's our plan development timeline. Of course, we've been coming to this group for several months now. We've been presenting components of the plan sort of piecemeal as we've been putting it together, looking for your input and feedback, and we've appreciated that. We've incorporated that into what we've now got to the point where we've compiled them all into a comprehensive draft of a final plan. That's what's included in your meeting materials today. And what we're asking today from the group is a recommendation for LTD board to adopt this plan. We will be presenting this also to the Strategic Planning Committee in the next few weeks and going to the LTD board in September. Next slide, please. I mentioned that the plan sort of culminates in this project list and that you've also kind of seen all the different components of this. What you haven't seen since we met last is a finalized version of our draft project list. Here are those projects in summary form. There are 27 of them. If you want more detail, they are in the plan starting at page 27. Some of these will look familiar. We had presented the project list from the 2019 plan to this group, and a lot of those projects have remained on this list because they continue to be relevant. Next slide, please. However, there are 13 projects that are new to the 2026 plan. Those are shown here, and while they're new to the 2026 plan, they're not necessarily new to LTD. Some of these do represent existing efforts at LTD. They're just new to the coordinated plan in this iteration. That all having been said, I'm going to turn the time over to LTD staff to go into more detail about some of these projects.
Sure.
There we go. Hi. Brandon Melton, planner with Lane Transit District. So just wanted to highlight a couple of projects throughout. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of them, and we're not going to go through all of them, but just some that are really relevant and, maybe a little bit different than what we've done in the past. So the Rural Shuttle pilot programs, I think a lot of you have heard of them. We're operating in 3 very rural areas. So the Mohawk Valley area, Oregon 36 between Mapleton and Deadwood, and then South Lane County. And so really, those areas were identified in LCOG's, the Link Lane TDP, Transit Development Plan. And so those are areas that we're looking to see how we can serve and what kind of ridership we can get from those areas. But typically, underserved and unserved areas by transit, there's just not traditional transit services. And so we're looking also at how do we serve areas outside of the metropolitan area? Any questions on that project? Okay, next slide. Second project here that we wanted to highlight was a grocery delivery pilot. So the issue here that we're trying to address is transportation costs are really high, especially for folks on fixed incomes. And so groceries take up a lot of that time and effort. And so something we're looking at is offering an alternative to grocery trips, and by partnering with a food delivery service to bring groceries to people where they're at. This is something that's been done at TriMet. It's been successful as a pilot there, and we're hoping to duplicate that here. So again, that's ideally getting fresh fruits and vegetables and better quality food to people where they might otherwise not make the trip out. And I'll go ahead and go forward. And fare management system. So we have free fare on fixed routes for 65 and older. We also have half fare on, so the riders who qualify for half fare on LTE's fixed route system don't receive the same discount in the transit system that LTD connects to. So this project would support the work to link other agencies to that discounted fare. So it's really making sure that benefit is extending to our other services. Next slide, please. And then 88 airport access. So right now there's no access to public transportation from the airport. And so this project is looking at different scenarios, looking at fixed route, on demand, and then other types of services that we might be able to fix that. And that's all I have to say about that. And any questions about any of those last 3 projects?
I have a question. On the Mapleton, Deadwood, how often is that going to run?
So right now, it started in March. We started running service on those areas, and Mapleton and Deadwood is once a week, 1 day a week, and it operates from, I want to say, 7:30 through 3:30.
Okay.
And so that service has been, had relatively low ridership. It's a very rural area. We have been doing a lot of outreach to the communities, though, to engage. Siuslaw Vision is one. Our marketing team has gone out to the communities to sort of promote the service. And so we're still trying to get to that community. But, like I said, 1 day a week is kind of a hard sell sometimes.
Were there any projects that did not make the list?
There were some projects from the 2019, I'm sorry. I believe there were 1 or 2 projects from the 2019 plan that didn't make it onto the 2026 plan, mostly because they were irrelevant or completed. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
I don't remember the specific ones. I could follow up. Yeah.
Any questions from Scott or Chelsea online?
Yeah, just one quick one. On the grocery delivery pilot, do you have a sense on how like eligibility is going to be determined?
John is running that, so I asked him to come up and maybe speak to that.
Sure, thanks for asking about that. That's going to be a really exciting pilot project we're looking forward to. It's based off of a similar pilot that was launched in Portland, and it particularly aims to serve paratransit ridership. So people who would otherwise be looking to ride source to take them to grocery stores, instead being able to have food delivered directly to them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, the food delivery is LTD or funding would purchase memberships, and then people would purchase their own groceries.
We're actually still in the process of establishing our project charter for the pilot program, but it would be based off a similar program that's up in Portland that the TriMet version of this program does purchase food delivery memberships that it distributes to paratransit drivers.
Okay, I think we can move forward.
Josh, could I?
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. I'm really curious with the ADA airport access. I see fixed route on here. And so if this were to lead to something like that, is that go beyond just serving people with mobility constraints, or would it just be for that demographic group?
I don't know that that's been really
To be determined.
To be
Right.
determined.
Okay.
I think we're looking at a variety of different ways to serve that need.
Okay.
And so I think we'll have some more clarity as we get into the project.
Okay.
I can say that one of the reasons that rose to the fore was there's been a lot of concern. People who aren't in a wheelchair can take a taxi, whereas people who are not in a wheelchair have
Right.
zero options. So that's
Yeah.
kind of risen as a priority in that
Yeah,
regard.
absolutely. I mean, I see that with on-demand, but when I read fixed route, it made me think maybe you guys were thinking beyond just for people with mobility constraints. So anyways, yeah, I hear a lot from university students who are always asking us about rides out to and from the airport. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, now I think we're ready to move forward.
We did request action.
Oh, that was it for your presentation. I did not realize. So the committee does need to take action on this. We are providing a recommendation to the LTD Board of Directors. We can either recommend to adopt the plan as presented, or if there is feedback the committee needs to incorporate, we can do that as well. Didn't seem like there were any more questions. Is anybody interested in making a motion?
I'll make a motion to forward the plan as presented with a recommendation to adopt to the LTD board.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Chelsea. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. We'll move forward with a roll call vote. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are voting in favor or against the motion. Scott?
Yes.
Bart?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you. Cassette?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that is 6 votes in favor, none opposed. Motion passes. Thank you, Dan and Brandon. Our next agenda item will be the stiff discretionary and intercommunity funding presentation by our very own Kathleen.
Thanks, Josh. First, I just wanted to thank you all for the hard work you've put in over the past months on the coordinated plan. It's been incredibly helpful to have your feedback. I think I'm getting feedback. Thank you for that. We're going to turn now to the heart of our work, STIF, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. I'm just going to do a brief refresher on what STIF is to sort of re-ground us in that work. Then we'll talk more about STIF discretionary in particular, since that's the topic at hand tonight. And I'm going to talk about a new solicitation that ODOT has put out to get those STIF discretionary applications called the Competitive Transit Grant Process. Next slide, please, Brianna. Actually, two more, yeah. So just a reminder that STIF is broken up essentially into what we call two flavors of STIF money. There's the STIF formula funds, which is the lion's share of STIF funding. It's 90% of the STIF revenues that the state has. And that gets broken up into two formula allocations, one based on the population of Lane County, one based on the payroll tax that's generated in Lane County. The other, much smaller portion is the STIF discretionary fund and the STIF intercommunity fund. Combined, those make up 9% of the STIF funds that come into the state. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick overview of the full STIF picture, on the left, you see all of the resources that go into STIF monies. So we have what's the primary source of funding, the 0.1% payroll tax. We also have cigarette taxes, non-highway gas taxes, and ID card fees that also feed into the total STIF allocation each biennium. And then, as you can see, that gets broken out by ODOT. A small percent, 1%, goes to a statewide resource center that can provide technical assistance to qualified entities around the state. As I mentioned, the intercommunity fund is 4%, and the STIF discretionary fund is 5% for that combined 9% I mentioned, and then 90% goes to the formula fund. One other crucial difference you see here between the intercommunity/discretionary fund and the formula fund is that the intercommunity fund and discretionary funds are distributed through a competitive grant solicitation. It's a statewide application. Any eligible entity in the state can apply. It's one pool of funds that's open to the entire state, whereas the formula funds are allocated, as I said earlier, by formula to the various districts throughout the state. Any questions on the overall STIF picture before I move into STIF discretionary in particular? Great. Next slide, please, Rana. Yeah. So typically, ODOT will put out a solicitation that's specifically for STIF discretionary and STIF intercommunity grant applications. This year, they've done something a little bit different, and they've put out what they're calling the Competitive Transit Grant solicitation. It combines not only STIF discretionary and STIF intercommunity funds, but also federal 5339 monies, which are grants for buses and bus facilities. They also broke this out into two phases. So there was phase one, which was about half of the federal $5339 only. That was specifically for vehicle replacement and other types of vehicle acquisition, primarily for services in rural areas. And then in phase two, they will take the remaining $5339 as well as the STIF discretionary and STIF intercommunity dollars and allocate those based on the grant applications. All told, there's about $25 million. One thing to note is this is for a one-year allocation. Typically, this would be for 2 years, a biennium. But because of some changes that ODOT is making in their grant processes going forward, they've decided to make this a one-year solicitation. It'll make it easier for them to switch some timelines going forward. Next slide, Brianna, thanks. Many different types of transportation projects are eligible. I won't read through the whole list. You can see capital, pilots, ongoing, preventive maintenance. I want to point out two things in particular. One, for this solicitation only, for the fiscal year 28 solicitation, ODOT is allowing folks to apply for funds for ongoing operations or recently reduced services under the STIF discretionary label. In the past, for STIF intercommunity funds, anyone could apply for ongoing operations, but not for STIF discretionary. This one funding cycle only for STIF discretionary as well. Applicants can apply for funding for ongoing operations under the STIF discretionary label. Something else that's different this time is that ODOT is not having applicants specify which type of funding they think is most appropriate for their applications. In the past, we've been able to say, like, this is a good STIF discretionary project or a good intercommunity project. This time, ODOT is going to look at each application themselves and then determine what they think the most appropriate source of funding is for the application. What that means in practical terms is that tonight we're going to look at several applications for vehicle acquisitions. Those actually could fall under any of the categories because $5339 are for vehicle purchases. We don't know at this point how ODOT is going to assign those applications, so we're going to go ahead and review them as if they could be STIF discretionary or STIF intercommunity applications, just to cover our bases there. In the end, they may get funded with $5339. We just don't know at this point. So we're going to be cautious and make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do. Some of you may also remember on my final bullet here that in the past, when we've talked about intercommunity service, which is service that connects two or more communities that are at least 20 miles apart, we've talked about the statewide transit network, which is ODOT's plan to make sure that there are bus connections connecting all the major areas throughout the state. This year, ODOT's changed that language a bit. We're now talking about the priority intercity bus network, but it's the same process as we've talked about in the past for the statewide transit network, just as a different name. Some examples of projects that apply in that category are LTD's Diamond Express, which connects City of Oak Ridge with the Eugene-Springfield metro area, and Link Lane services that connect Florence to Eugene and Florence to Yachats. Thanks, Brianna. So I think I've probably covered just about all of this already. Yeah, so let's move forward with that. I think we've talked about all that. Just a sense of the timeline here because it's been fairly compact. We received notices of the two phases of the solicitations in mid-February and mid-March. Initial applications were already due in early and mid-April. The STIF Advisory Committee will do its role of reviewing all of the proposals and then making recommendations to the LTD Board of Directors at this meeting and at our next meeting on June 9th. We'll then go ahead and submit the final applications to ODOT. My Board of Directors meeting is incorrect. I apologize for that. It's actually June 17th. But at that meeting, the Board of Directors will receive the recommendation from this committee, and they'll then decide whether to go ahead and recommend all of those proposals to ODOT. And then we sit and wait for a bit. ODOT will take some time to review the proposals. They will go to the Public Transportation Advisory Committee, PTAC, in December, which will be where we get our first sense of what might be getting funded. And then finally, in January, the Oregon Transportation Commission will review the proposals and make final funding decisions. And funding will start in July of 2027. Thanks, Bree. So I've mentioned this, but let's just spell it out what the advisory committee's role is here. The committee will review each proposal that comes in Lane County. I just learned today that there will be about, I think, a total of 11 applications if we include one that we're going to do tonight that I think ODOT has decided to send to 5339, but because we just learned that, we're going to take a look at it anyway. It will be several applications from LTD, several from LCOG, also 2 from the City of Eugene and 1 from the University of Oregon. Tonight, we'll just take an initial look at a few of LTD's proposals because I did not have the other proposals until this afternoon. And then next meeting, we will go over all of the rest of them. Okay, what
I'm sorry, Kathleen. Before we move to talking about these proposals, does anybody have any questions?
Good point,
on
Josh.
Everything she just went through on the stiff discretionary.
That was a lot of information.
Okay, it doesn't seem like I needed to interrupt you. I apologize. Please
No, I'm
continue.
glad you did. Thank you. So tonight, as I mentioned, we're just going to look at 3 of LTD's proposals. These are all vehicle replacement proposals. I know it's hard to sometimes carry over what we covered in one meeting to the next, especially when there's so much detail. So I tried to group these 3 vehicle replacement proposals together. They'll be easy to remember, at least in terms of dollars, because they're all asking the same amount. They're all asking for grant funding of $720,000 with a match from STIF formula of $180,000 for a total project cost for each vehicle of $900,000. I'm going to let Josh go ahead and call up some of LTD's subject matter experts who can talk to you more about each of these proposals.
Thank you, Kathleen. Taking this in turn, the Diamond Express replacement vehicle, welcome up Eric Evers and John Allen.
Hello again, thanks everyone. So we've already spoken about the Diamond Express operations itself at a prior meeting, but today we're going to be talking about the vehicles that are needed to be able to support the operations for the Diamond Express service. So as a reminder, this is our lifeline connection between Oak Ridge and the metropolitan area here. So there really isn't another viable public transportation option currently. It's approximately 90 minutes to do the trip. So on, say, an MX service, you might see some people that are standing on a busy bus. We don't have the option to do that. Being able to have additional room for someone to be able to grab a loop while they're traveling 90 minutes along a very difficult to travel road. It's a bit bumpy, it's a bit rough. We put a lot of wear and tear on our vehicles. It's not an option. So we need to make sure that everyone has a seat available, and so we've typically had larger vehicles to support this service, meaning 40-foot buses. So typically, we're putting a lot of wear and tear on them. We currently have one in our lot, which is requiring service, and Eric can speak a bit more to the state of our vehicle fleet. They require replacement periodically. And so this is looking to support a replacement vehicle to continue to support ongoing operations for the Diamond Express. This is a service that provides a connection. Even though Amtrak goes by the city of Oak Ridge, it does not stop there. We serve as the interlining connection, so if someone goes to Amtrak.com, they can actually book their tickets even alongside their other Amtrak journey, but it's our Diamond Express vehicle that will actually stop in the city of Oak Ridge. It also supports what's typically been a lower income, higher unemployment area within Lane County, and to help be able to support that, we keep our fares as modest as we can, $2.50 for a trip of that length, almost unheard of. To have a deal that good, and particularly with fuel prices the way they are, it's one of the best deals someone can get to be able to access, whether it's education, work, shopping, other opportunities within the metropolitan area that may not otherwise be in abundance within Oak Ridge. So the application itself is for a replacement for a quite old vehicle, older than you'll typically see us replace. It's a 2003, but because it was refurbished, we were able to get a little bit of additional life out of it than it otherwise would have had. It involves stripping it all the way down to the steel. But even at that point, it's well beyond its useful service life. So this grant application looks to support its replacement. Eric, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to sit with you today. John covers, as he usually does, a lot of it. It is an old vehicle. It's about 7 years from its original purchase date when it was fully refurbished. New engine, new transmission, suspension, all gone through. But as John also talked to, it's a rough ride. If anybody's taken that trip, it's not easy in a car, and it's more difficult in a bus, and it's hard on a bus. So it's at the end of its life. We do service that with two 40-foot buses. We used to allow the contractor to manage those buses completely. A couple years ago, we brought them in-house. The best technicians to support these transit buses are our own fleet team here, and that's what we do now. So we rotate those in on about a 30-day basis based off of preventive maintenance inspection cycles. But that bus currently is sitting right now with a cracked frame, waiting on some parts. It is repairable. We had the same issue on our 2003 Gillig buses that we no longer have, but we had crack frame issues. There are parts to fix it. We're waiting on those parts so we can get it back in service until we can come around for funding to replace it. But happy to entertain any questions on the buses specifically.
I see Gino.
Talk more about the sizing of the bus. I understand the need for passengers to be able to sit down. I understand the need to accommodate, people who with mobility issues. But I'm also thinking about the number of rides on that bus, and I remember that number being fairly low.
It depends on the trip, so that's a really good point. Generally, we have to size the bus towards our peak or maximum capacity. So we do have trips in the day that will have more and less riders, but we generally have to choose the largest vehicle to accommodate riders during our peak periods of time. The challenge would be if we size down a little bit too much. If it was, say, the last trip of the day, there's just not another option to get home. We'd have to bring another vehicle, and that would be an even greater expense at our point to send two vehicles in parallel to provide the same service. Kind of going back to my MX example, this is another type of service where in the metropolitan area, if a bus is full, or the next one's coming in 10 minutes, whereas for the Diamond Express, it's a much different proposition. So we try and make sure that we can accommodate everyone.
What's the current maximum amount of riders that we have right now on the route?
On 40-foot?
No, not what the bus can accommodate, but how many people?
For the service, the max peak
max
that we've seen.
Oh, we do, so we're looking at about 700 rides a month. I don't have the data right in front of me, but we are balancing both ambulatory and mobility device capacity within one vehicle. What we find is the two main vehicle types that we use are like a 25-foot cutaway or a 40-foot bus. We're stretching a bit too much for a 25-foot cutaway.
So let's talk about number of people that can sit down on each vehicle. On the 25-foot cutaway, how many people
usually
can sit down?
10 plus 2, so meaning 10 ambulatory passengers and 2 wheelchair securement stations simultaneously, and then Eric for a 40-foot.
On the big one.
It'd be two ADA positions and about 23 seated passengers.
That's
significant.
Not a large number, is it?
No.
No, I can see. That makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
Bill? I have a question, John. I know Oak Ridge is a popular bike riding destination. Do you have any bike riders that ride the bus from Eugene to Oak Ridge for the day and return? And is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're able to accommodate bicycles on our vehicles. It's something we look at and think about with any vehicle purchase. We have experience with installing bicycle racks on these vehicles. We've also explored if there was additional interest other options, which could include things like bike trailers, rear-mounted bike racks, having bicycles inside vehicles. So I think we're open to that. We haven't heard that that's created a capacity challenge for us yet, but we know that it remains a popular destination for mountain bikers specifically.
And a follow-up question, on some buses I've been on, I've seen passengers put their bicycles underneath. Do these buses have underneath cargo areas like a long-distance bus?
They do not. Those would be coach-type buses over the road. Yes, sir.
Do you allow bikes inside the bus?
I've not heard that we've ever had a challenge with being able to transport anyone with a bicycle to Oak Ridge and back. Typically for our rural routes, we have a little bit more discretion, whereas in the metropolitan area, we tend to make sure to prioritize our bicycles in the racks so that priority seating is used for mobility devices like wheelchairs and power chairs. But I've not heard that using 40-foot buses that we've had challenges accommodating both.
Just checking in for those folks online. Scott or Chelsea, any questions?
At the moment.
No questions.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'm just very impressed with a 2003 full-size bus at 400,000 miles. Wow, that's incredible. So well done, LTD. And then I'm wondering, with a new bus, would there be the possibility of doing this as a hybrid for more efficiency, or do you see more of a standard bus?
Yeah, our plan is to proceed with what we've done lately, which is a straight diesel with a bigger engine, which is what we did to the last Diamond Express bus, a 350 horsepower B500 transmission, obviously for the trip up and back. And based off of our study we had done, I think about 3 years ago now, what the fleet procurement plan is to stick with what we know now, what's proven, lower cost over the life of the bus as well, easier on the fleet maintenance team while we continue to explore those other propulsion options. But for now, our plan is to buy a diesel bus.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, I just wanted to mention, I know, this connection is so critical to the community of Oak Ridge, and I've known, like, for example, high school students who go to one of the charter schools here who rely on this connection from Oak Ridge to Eugene, and I'm pleased to see you all are looking at this. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this project? Okay, I think John is excused. Eric has to stay up and talk to us some more. For the downtown loop replacement vehicle, we'll welcome up Brandon Melton again.
Hello again. So this project is seeking funding, again, for a 40-foot low-floor Gillig bus, largely to support the downtown and riverfront circulator, the Route 1. It's a new fixed route service that we launched July 1 of 2025. So downtown Eugene has undergone a lot of growth, new high-density housing in the riverfront neighborhood, and a new city hall. So the circulator addresses the rising transportation demand in that area. And it's based on a circulator study that was done in partnership with the city of Eugene. So this is responsive to that study. So the route links key destinations, downtown Eugene Station, Amtrak Depot, Riverfront District, and the new City Hall. It also connects to housing for older adults and people with disabilities. So the service features a low or no fare, prioritize accessibility, particularly for older adults, people with disabilities, and families with young children. So the full build out would be, I'm sorry, that was different project. So the fixed route design reflects direct stakeholder recommendations and part of that study that I mentioned earlier, and the pilot program guidelines were utilized under our mobility management framework to define that project. I think I covered most of that. So yeah, we're looking for something that could be dedicated with some amount of branding related to the circular, the downtown loop, and we'd be replacing a 2011 with 600,000 miles, so up in the ante there. It's really flexing over here.
I can answer questions on the bus. It's the same type of bus, a Gillig 40-foot diesel bus, as a replacement, not an expansion of our fleet.
Questions on this project from the committee?
I don't have a question, just a comment. So I see people taking the Route 1, and it's a sweet little service, and I think it's well-used, and it creates kind of a one-seat ride for a lot of people that used to be, more of a disconnected ride. And I think having a dedicated bus that's branded can make it even more attractive and more fun.
Yeah, and that does remind me too that something I didn't mention was that the new routing actually goes a lot further south and connects to a lot more amenities. Such another grocery store. It goes all the way down to the Safeway and other restaurants and just some medical resources as well. So that route has been very popular. We've heard a lot of positive feedback actually for it. So it's been good.
I do have one question myself. So given that the downtown loop is a pilot program, and I certainly hope it continues, but if it doesn't, what happens to the vehicle?
Again, this is a replacement vehicle for already a current 40-foot vehicle, so we would just use it for other service.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this project? Okay, I think we can move on to the next one, which is the two of you again, I believe.
All right. So our full fleet size, this is more Eric's realm, but I can kind of get it started off. So we're looking to have 67 full-size transit buses to operate our fixed route service. FTA has a recommended spare ratio of 20%. Our current spare ratio is at 57% because we have a lot of aging vehicles. So this funding would replace a 2011 vehicle, 640,000 miles on it, and the replacement vehicles allow LTD to dispose of aging vehicles and right-size its fleet.
Yeah, I think everybody knows where we sit. So we are attempting to right-size the fleet, as Brandon said, which is too big right now, 114 size fleet, running a peak service of 69, which is where we get the huge spare ratio over the 20% allowed by FTA. Right now we have a waiver for that expansion. The 19 battery electric buses that we're attempting to move to LA gets us closer, but it doesn't get us there all the way. We do have that meeting, just for gee whiz, we have that meeting tomorrow with the FTA on moving that project forward as well. But this is just another opportunity to try to take another advantage of funding to replace all the vehicles that we need to through other funding programs.
I have a question. So assuming that you were able to offload all the vehicles that you don't want, where would that leave the remaining fleet in terms of age relative to your peers?
Great two-part question. Where does it leave us, and then where does it leave us in relation to our peers? Is kind of all over the place in relation to our peers. Where it needs to get us, really, our fleet. Our average fleet age should be, you would hope, below 7. Right now, it's somewhere around 10 and a half, right? The average life of a bus is, or minimum useful life of a bus is 12 years. we're way up there. Part of that is our struggle with battery electric buses, in the sense that we've had to hold on to these 2011 vehicles. And further to that, we're holding on to 2006 straight diesel buses as well. So a couple large fleets of buses that over the next few years we hope to replace. And as we do that, 8 more Gilligs coming this summer, July, August. We'll get rid of some 2011 buses. If we get funding for this, that's one. We have another 11 on the heels of that in about a year and a half or more 40-foot buses. We'll get rid of most of the 2011 fleet, and then we'll start chipping away at the 6200s. The 6200s are easier to maintain. They cost less, and they also have an engine that we can rebuild if we run into a problem. The 2011 hybrid buses, those engines, we can't rebuild, and we've just found out this last week we can't buy a replacement for too. So, which is why someone's like, there's a 5-year difference between those, but the cost and the capability of maintaining the 2011s much longer isn't there. The 62s is there. We can ride these workhorses several more years effectively. Hopefully I answered your question.
I think so.
Okay.
Other questions from the committee? Pete?
Yeah, can you briefly explain what the spare ratio is in case not everybody gets that?
Yeah, that's I've had this conversation a couple times in the last few days because some people just think 80 buses and 80 bus peak and you have a total 100 buses, which means your spares is 20, which isn't accurate. It's based off of, and it's an odd formula, but your total buses, so in this case 114 buses, subtracting what our peak is right now of 69, divided by that same peak of 69, which really puts our spare ratio above the 56. It's somewhere just north of 60 right now. When the 19 battery electric buses go away, obviously that's a significant help. Brings us down to somewhere in the high 30s, I believe, spare ratio, and then chips away. And that's really what the FTA is looking from us for when they look at the spare ratio and they say you had a waiver for multiple years now and you haven't made progress. This is us trying to make progress, is to right size the fleet. So hopefully that answered your question, Pete. I can send out the formula itself, and maybe it's easier, as it is for me, to kind of do it yourself to understand. It's not straightforward math.
I understand the math. I just wanted to put that out there so people can understand what that actually means.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
One more question, and maybe this one's for Kathleen. Which one of these projects is likely to go the 5339 route?
My sense from information I got today is that the Diamond Express vehicle will be funded through 5339. We were able to submit that application in phase 1, which was specifically for 5339 for rural service areas. So that's the sense based on what I've heard today.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandon and Eric. I think that's all we have for you today. Thank you very much. So Kathleen, I believe our last agenda item is staff updates and future meetings.
Yeah, let me start with future meetings since we're already on this track. So we'll continue this process that we've started at our June 9th meeting. We'll have 8 more applications to hear presentations about and to review. I will prepare a packet that I'll do my best to summarize this information for you because that is a lot of applications to have to read through. I'll put together a table of all the applications. I'll put together highlights from each of the applications, and hopefully that will make it a little bit easier for folks to prepare for the meeting. We'll have folks come and present from each of the different agencies that have submitted applications, and they'll be able to answer your questions just like LTD staff did tonight. The other thing we'll be doing at our June 9th meeting is just a housekeeping item. To align with our new bylaws, we need to do a quick election for chair and vice chair. Josh and Carrie just started in January. They've both indicated to me that they're happy to continue, so I imagine we can resolve that pretty quickly, but we'll address that on June 9th. I just had one other housekeeping item, a committee membership update. Carmen Artillas, she's been a member of this committee, a city planner from Oak Ridge, has had to resign her position. She's moved out of Lane County and onto other adventures. So I was hoping she'd be here last week or the last meeting so we could wish her well, but she's already moved on. I will not be able to replace that position for our 1 June meeting, but in summer, I imagine we'll have several vacancies as we come to the end of a number of members' terms, and I'll start a recruitment process probably in late June, and I'll be reaching out to all of you for some help with that, for any ideas and possible candidates you might have.
Kathleen, can you remind me, next meeting, we will be voting on the recommendation for the LTD board?
That's correct. The next meeting, after we've gotten through all the presentations, the committee can look at the proposals as a whole and determine which some, however many of those proposals they'd like to recommend to the LTD board for funding. There's also the option to prioritize the proposals for ODOT. In the past, at least historically, this committee has chosen not to prioritize. We've always thought that that's sort of putting our own thumb on the scale about which proposals we want ODOT to knock out, and we'd rather let ODOT do that triaging on their own. But we can address all of that next week once we've gotten through the presentations and you're weighing the different proposals.
And that meeting is June 11th, right?
I believe it's June 9th.
June 9th. June 9th, okay, June 9th. So just a reminder to the committee, we need 6 members for a quorum, and then we need a majority of all members of the committee, so 6 votes again in order to pass anything. So hopefully you will all be able to attend June 9th.
Yes, and that is a good reminder. Thank you, Josh. With Carmen having to resign her position and Kelly Clark remaining out of the country through the end of June, quorum's a little more difficult to achieve right now. So thank you, everyone, for attending this meeting, and I hope you can be here in June.
Okay, well, I just want to echo that appreciation for the folks who have spent their time here this afternoon. Thank you for helping do this good work. Thank you to staff for your presentations and answering all our very good questions. And with that, I will call this meeting adjourned.